I will start, and I will be opening this session today of this webinar organized by the French-Greek Chamber of Shipping. And I would like to start firstly by saying hello to all. Hello to all the participants. Hello and thank you and welcome to the participants, which I understand are over 135, which is I think quite a big success. And also a big hello and a big thank you to all our speakers today, which are all of very high quality. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and of its Maritime Committee, I'm very happy to open this webinar. As you all know, and that's why you are here listening today and present to this webinar, we are addressing a very important issue today, important for many reasons. And as I see it, there are three different approaches, one being geopolitical and military, definitely, one being economical and business-wise, and the third one being quite environmentally important. Today, our speakers will be presented more specifically for the military part by Cyril Brett, the Vice President of the Chamber and of Naval Group. He will present our guest of honor, Admiral Emmanuel Slars, who dedicates some time to this webinar, for which I thank him deeply, because it's a lot of stress, a lot of work and hard work for himself and all his troops in the Red Sea. They will also, and they will be presented by Vivi Kouliopoulos, and thank you for being there, Vivi.
Thank you for having
me. Sorry. There will be two very experienced gentlemen from Bureau Veritas who will be addressing the issue, Dr. Koloroki and Panos Anastasiou, both from Bureau Veritas, who will be dealing more with the technical and business matters. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you to all. Thank you to the organizer. We'll do that when we conclude the session. It's been hard work organizing it. Thank you to people of the chamber, and thank you to my colleague Thibault de Saint-Lager, who organized the presence of the French Navy today with us. So I will now leave the chair to Cyril, who will present the military part of our session today. Cyril.
Thank you, Philippe. Hello, everyone. So I'm Cyril Brett from Naval Group in Greece. So let's dive into the security and military part of this webinar. I will first thank you again, Admiral, for your time, for your contribution, for your availability. On your shoulders, we will put the responsibility of drawing us the landscape or describing the state of affairs in the Red Sea. This is a security and a military crisis that has many, many consequences in the financial, in the economic, in the environmental, and in the political sector, of course. And before I give you the floor to address those questions, I just would like to remind the audience of several key points of your career. First, you have a vast knowledge of the air defense operations. Second, you are accustomed to operate in coalition regarding those operations. And third, you have a deep and a vast operational experience of the region. I remind the audience of your current position, which is very important in all the aspects of the crisis we are tackling today. You are currently, and since 2022, Joint Commander of the French forces deployed in the Indian Ocean, but you have also the responsibility of Joint Commander of the French forces, including other forces than the Marine Nationale, the French Navy, stationed in the UAE. I would like to raise three questions concerning the state of affairs in the Red Sea. First, what is now the security risk for the maritime sector and for the shipping industry? Second, what are the capacities and what are the military warships that are engaged now under your responsibility in the area? And third, maybe a bit of a prospective point of view, what are the outcomes that you are aiming at in the next weeks or month to come in the Red Sea? Thank you again for your time, Admiral. I leave you the floor.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bright. I do appreciate your trust. So in the next 15 minutes, I will just set the scene first with a map. And so that I would like to present to everybody. So effectively, currently, I'm commanding the French forces in the region from Abu Dhabi for a year and a half. And so I'm acquainted to the specificity of the region. So just to recall, the issue in the Red Sea started after the constatation made by the Houthi that they were effectively unable to strike the Israeli territory, which was their aim after the war that started in the Gaza Strip. And as they were unable to reach the Israeli territory, then they decided to commit against the maritime sector, and notably in the Red Sea. And they started by a great action that took place on the 19th of November with the seizure of the roll-on roll-off Galaxy Leader by helicopters and fast roping, which depict with the level of knowledge that they were able to present through the film they have released, that they have learned to do this, which means that they had a mentor to do such an action. And since then, in the Red Sea, they have committed almost hundreds of attacks, and I will come back to this. So first, let's look at a map to understand what is at stake in the northwest of the Indian Ocean. So roughly, the normal flow of commerce is bound to use the northwest of the Indian Ocean. So from the Malacca Strait with 80,000 ships per year. When I mean a ship, I mean real ship. I mean cargo ships, tankers, container ships, etc. So 80,000 ships per year means one ship every 6 minutes. So when you look at the Malacca Strait from a mountain, your eyes will embrace roughly 25 to 30 ships at the minimum. So a ship every 6 minutes is the density of the tube, the metropolitan in some of our capital town. On the eastern part, we have the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Strait of Hormuz, which are roughly on a 20,000, 25,000-ish ship per year. That means on a normal basis, a ship every 20 minutes. And then we have a 10,000-ish big ship through the Good Hope Cape on the normal flow. And since the crisis broke out in the South Red Sea and the fear was spread by the Houthis between Bab el-Mandeb and the Cape of Good Hope, we have almost exchanged the figures. So now we are down to roughly 200-300 ships per week in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, whereas we go up to 700 and between 500 and 700 ships per week at the Good Hope Cape. So what is the first conclusion? Is that the traffic is sensible to the fear. And then the second conclusion is that when there is an alternative, the maritime shipping is able to adapt at some stage. But the consequences are that it takes roughly between 1 and 2 weeks of delay to pass through the Cape of Good Hope to join Asia to Europe and vice versa. And that, of course, if you want to maintain the flow of goods, it means that it requires more ships to do the job, since ships are to stay at sea for a longer time. So we can draw some first conclusion is that the maritime sector can adapt. It can adapt when solutions and alternatives exist, which is the case with regards to Bab el-Mandeb and the Cape of Good Hope. It's probably not the case if such a situation would occur, for instance, in the Strait of Hormuz. There is no alternative to the Strait of Hormuz, and would it be through pipelines and other trains or any kind of projects? There is no alternative to the Strait of Hormuz to make sure that we could maintain the commerce between, for instance, Europe, the GCC countries and Asia. So take into account that, for instance, 50% of the fossil fuel used by China is coming from the Strait of Hormuz area, and that since the war broke out in Ukraine, we in Europe have tripled our importation of liquid natural gas from the Strait of Hormuz region. Okay, so let's move on. So with the situation in the Red Sea. So the Houthis, who operate roughly in the northwest of Yemen, were able to launch numerous attacks against the traffic in the Red Sea. So their aim was to mostly target ships of Israeli, US, and UK interest. But you all know that the interests that are concerned on the ship are numerous. There is the flag, there is the owner, there is the cargo, there is the destination, there is the port of origin. There are many nationalities that could be involved into the shipping. So it means that the Houthis are trying to exploit not only the automatic information systems used by the ships when they are using it, and I invite them not to use it in that region, but they are also using the digital, what I call the digital wake of a ship, to facilitate their targeting. So it is extremely interesting to work on that issue, to maintain the security around the digital wake of a ship, to manage this issue of targeting, of being targeted by the Houthis. So what were their processes? Most of the time, and hopefully they were unable to do a second seizure after the Galaxy Leader assault they've done on the 19th of November. But their way of actions was to try to strike a ship with a one-way UAV, which is a small attack drone loaded with a small military charge that was, however, big enough to generate a small fire. This is, for instance, what we can see on the picture that is on the bottom left, where we can see a rescue ship on fire that has been obviously stricken by a small one-way UAV. And then when there is a fire on board the ship, you reduce your speed to fight against that this fire. And so the Houthis used to launch another intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance drone to elaborate data on the position of the ship, so that they could try to strike the ship a second time, not with a small drone, but this time with a ballistic missile that would be more deadly. And one need to take into account that since the 19th of November, the Houthis have been able to use, in the maritime domain, almost 400 kinetic vectors. Should it be small combat UAV, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. So since the 8th of December, the French Navy is involved in a continuous manner in the Red Sea to make sure that the freedom of navigation in line with the international law of the seas and also in line with the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2217 allows to maintain a certain level of security for the traffic. And since then, we've been able to achieve with our destroyers more than 70 accompaniments of ships, just like the one that you can see on the bottom central picture, which was a picture taken with destroyer Languedoc, accompanying one CMA CGM ship and one APL ship in December. The EU, the European Union, decided to launch a maritime operation to mobilize EU member states so that everybody could could participate to this maritime operation, which is, by the way, strictly defensive. And an EU operation has been launched on the 19th of February. The name is Aspides. This operation is under the operational command of Greek Rear Admiral from Larissa in Greece. And since the first day, France has committed one destroyer into this operation, which is still currently the case. It's also a strictly defensive operation that is, just like we did under the national command, is providing accompaniment to ships transiting in the region. So what other things you can see on that picture is that if you take into account the amount of weapons that were used by the Houthis since the mid of November, of course, they need to resupply. So they are resupplying their weapons through sea, through air, likely, and through land as well. And our US allied were able to do some weapon seizure in the Gulf of Aden. This is what you can see on the picture that is just below the Galaxy Leader. This is the result of a seizure done on a DOE a few months ago. You can see thrusters of ballistic missiles, electro-optic systems, and military charge. You can see on the right of this picture a 4-cylinder engines used by one of their one-way attack UAV. And so you ask me what is ahead of us. So what is ahead of us? I surely would need to have a kind of crystal ball to answer that question. But if we want to make sure that the freedom of navigation prevail in the South Red Sea, we need to stay committed there. This is an international strait, and the South Red Sea comprise international areas. So since France is attached to those values of international law, we will highly likely remain committed in this region, and I hope that the other EU member states, as well as our US allied, will remain committed in that region to make sure that the maritime security prevail. And in the meantime, I invite every nation also to be committed to fight against the weapons trafficking that at the end gives the possibility to the Houthis to have some resupply so that they could again threat the maritime traffic in that region. And this fight against weapons trafficking is covered by another United Nations Security Council resolution, that is the 2216, that effectively give the rights to fight against the weapons trafficking bound to Yemen. And I think I will stop here, and I hope that I have set the scene for every one of us, and I will be happy to answer any questions now or at any later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for this thorough description of the situation and for the the analysis of the different modes of operation of the Houthis. I will strike the first question at you so that you can then answer the other questions that will be risen by the audience. I wonder, it's been 6 months now, or more than 6 months, that this crisis has started. It's been 6 months that the international community, the UN, the EU, have started to react and to prevent the attacks on the ships and the threats on the freedom of navigation. Did you witness during your operations an evolution in the threats posed by the Houthis, an evolution, an adaptation to the mobilization of the international community? And did you witness in the way the shipping industry is behaving in the region? Did you witness any evolution? Did you see any changes? For example, do you consider that the shipping industry, the shipping companies are now fully seized of the nature, the extent of the risks, and is really conscious of the measures that have to be taken within the region in order to prevent or to avoid the attacks? Thank you for your reply.
So I will answer first to your second question, if I may say so. And I do think that effectively big maritime operators are fully aware of what is going on, but not everybody, not everyone. And so, for instance, we still have ships that are cruising in the region, and even those who are obviously of Israelis, US, and UK interest. They are still cruising in the region with their AIS on, so which dramatically facilitates the job for the Houthis to target them. And so we try to raise awareness of CSOs, of ships themselves, because a part of my team here is taking the time to try to call the ships a few days in advance prior to their entry into the high threat area, just to tell them, hey guys, turn off your AIS or you may die. Okay? But some captains are saying, well, my company has told me to keep my AIS on. And also that the best management practice number 5 that is issued by various syndicates, notably that has been issued in the framework of the fight against piracies in the year 2010. The BMP 5, best management practice number 5, says you have to keep your AIS on. But frankly, and I do it here, I strongly advise ships that are of Israeli, US, and UK interest to turn their AIS off into that area, to effectively so that the targeting done by the Houthis will be much more difficult. And in the meantime, it's also extremely interesting to see that the shipping is extremely reactive. So roughly, there is a week of delay between a change in the threat and the reaction on the scene of action, if I may say so. So of course, there's many aspects that are from a purely economic point of view of a great interest. But it's not. I'm not competent to deal onto this. And so, with regards to the Houthis, I would say that they are extremely innovative, extremely. They have a rationality that is not ours. So, if we do deal with this level of threat with our rationality, we will lose. Because they have other rationality. So we have to really think out of the box to provide the best protections, to be as reactive as we can. But what I can see is that for the moment, ships that were under French Navy accompaniment, none of them were hit by any Houthi attack. So it was just to give a quick answer to your two questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. And I see that our president has a question. Philippe, you want to raise a question?
If I may, I think it is important. All what Admiral has said is important, but he did say that some nations, some ships, some companies are more mistreated than others. I think that's an important thing. Normally, there's something called the liberty of the seas, and it has been the case for hundreds of years. Today, we don't have the situation. In certain areas, some countries, some navies are in a better position than others who are in the worst position. Americans, Israelis, some Europeans are not in a good situation. At the same time, it has been declared by the Houthis that some nations, I heard about Russia and China, would feel free to go through this area without any harm, any risk. And that is something which is very worrying, because it is the whole principle of freedom of the sea which is at stake. And this is why at the BIMCO board last month, I raised this issue, because it's a real matter of traditions of liberty of sea which is at stake. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for this comment. However, I would like to add that we have already seen some Chinese ship being targeted by the Houthis.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. So being of Chinese interest is not a full spectrum insurance. And also because sometimes the threatening vectors that are used can miss their target and finally end on another ship. So that it has been the case in the last weeks. So I would say that nobody can consider itself as being totally protected from a mistake done by the Houthis. So of course they are not communicating when they are targeting or mistargeting a ship. But for instance, we have some examples of Chinese ship being targeted. That was just a comment I wanted to add on your remark.
So it leads me the question.
Everybody is equal, but some are more equal than others.
Those remarks and the answer you gave to the question of Philippe leads me to another question that is being raised on the chat by Laurent Tuillier, the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Let's move to the strategic level of analysis. Do you see in a foreseeable future new countries, new navies that can be embarked, that can contribute to the current action against the Houthi threats in order to secure the maritime route of the Red Sea? Do you have any preparation in order to enlarge the coalition that is currently protecting the convoys?
I would say that in Northwest Indian Oceans, the navies involved are always the same. So there are the US, punctually UK, France on a permanent manner. The Spanish are there in the framework of the European Union operations Atalanta. The Italian Navy is also there currently in the framework of this EU operation Aspides, and from time to time in the framework of Atalanta. And then we have on a more irregular basis the presence of the Netherlands Navy, the Navy of the Netherlands, of Belgium. We had a participation of a German ship that was exceptional in Aspides. And all in all, this is the navies that are effectively capable of operating with good level of support in the Indian Ocean. And then there are the Indian Navy, that is an extremely capable navy taking care of Indian interest in the region. And they are doing a great job, notably all around the Horn of Africa. We've been able to notice the presence of the Chinese Navy, who took the opportunity of the threat in the framework of the piracy during the year 2010 to now have a permanent presence. But they do not operate in the Red Sea. They are just cruising in the Gulf of Aden. So, do I see other navies' commitments on a permanent basis? I don't think so. I don't think so. So maybe the Indian Navy could, for instance, we could imagine that they could commit into the Red Sea. But for the moment, their interest is more to operate in the Arabian Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and all around the Indian coast. But they are an extremely capable and trustable navy.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. I think this is time now to move to the economic part of our discussions. So I leave the floor to the next panelist. Thank you, sir, once more for your input and for your answers. It's been really insightful and very enlightening concerning the security situation in the Red Sea. Thank you again.
So thank you all for joining us today, and many thanks to the Chamber for the invitation. I'll start by making a brief introduction of the two panelists. Dr. Kokarakis has a very long and successful career as a naval architect and mechanical engineer. He holds a PhD from the University of Michigan and currently is the technical director of Bureau Veritas in Southeast Europe, Black Sea and Adriatic zone, responsible for the smooth technical operation within the zone with a focus on the implementation of green regulations and fuel-saving techniques. Mr. Panagiotis Anastasiou is the second panelist. He is also a member of the Bureau Veritas team. He is the leader of the cybersecurity technical team for Bureau Veritas, marine and offshore. And in addition to that, he is the Bureau Veritas representative on the Ajax Cyber Systems panel and has an active contribution in all the discussions and also in the evolution of the cybersecurity requirements for the maritime industry. We've heard all the details about the naval presence in the area following the start of the Houthi attacks in November. I understand that the Maritime Security Center Horn of Africa recently announced that they have recorded 132 attacks on cargo ships since November. I believe we all recently heard about Eastern Pacific Shipping, who recently announced that they will not be transiting the Red Sea. And the Vice Admiral also referred to the prolongation of the voyages and the supply and demand balance. So with that in mind, I would invite Mr. Kokarakis to give us a brief overview of the consequences of the disruption in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, both from a financial and from an environmental standpoint, on the basis, of course, of his experience and also an analysis of the vessel types, which were the first ones to start following the detour. So, Dr. Kokarakis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalliopoulou. And ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to this very hot topic, very hot webinar, having ripple effects on shipping. We have a different impact depending on the type of vessel. And allow me to share my screen to show you, I don't know if you can see. Can you see my screen? With the
yes,
type?
we can. Yes, we can.
Very good. The screen shows the type of vessels and their numbers as it evolved from November since until about end of March. We see a tremendous reduction of passages, about 56% overall, but the type of vessel which is hurt the most are the container ships with an 80% reduction. This, of course, has a direct reverberation on the freight rates on container ships, which are reporting raises up to 2.5, 3 times higher rates depending on the distance. The higher the distance, the lower the raise. For example, Shanghai to Rotterdam, which is a relatively shorter route, it is 2.5 times increase. New York to Shanghai is a longer voyage, so we see at 1.5 times raise in the rates, in the container rates. And this is actually in combination with the other unfortunate event, which is the drought in the Panama Canal. So we have two events happening at the same time, the disruption in the Red Sea passage and the problems in the Panama Canal, which of course, as we know, by contract obligations, favors first the container ships. So we see 80% reduction in container ship passages, and the average is about 56% reduction, with the bulk carriers being almost the lowest. LNGs do not pass through Suez. It is quite a risk to pass these expensive vessels and their cargo through Suez. So since January, we don't have any LNGs crossing. Tankers are probably on the average, and bulk carriers, given the time its sensitivity of their cargo and the lower chartering rates, they are more adaptable. The reduction is still high, is about 46%. So it is a significant financial impact, which forces the vessels to go through the Cape of Good Hope, which has its own problems. The distance is, for example, Shanghai to Rotterdam is about 30% more, which means more fuel consumption, more emissions, higher environmental pollution. But if we take a liner and we look into the annual tally of emissions and fuel consumed, we see that the emissions are not very different, because the longer distance means a lower number of voyages. If we look on a per voyage type, we have about 1,000 tons more of fuel consumed from the longer route through the Cape of Good Hope, which, by the way, may also result in problems for the vessel, because we know that the Cape of Good Hope, not only Good Hope awaits the sailors because of the crossroads between two oceans. The weather is very bad in that area of the world. This assumption, there is a basic assumption here. There are 10 more days, about 10 more days longer trip, maybe two weeks longer trip, which means that the charterers are going to press the vessel to run faster. In case that happens, this is a disastrous occurrence for the vessel, because to keep the same time, we made a calculation. If we go through Suez by 16 knots, we need about 21 knots to have the same time through the Cape of Good Hope. This means that the fuel consumption will increase by a factor of 3, and the key performance indicator, which is the CII, will increase about 3 times, reaching E level, which is not a good performance for the vessel. So the other problem is that the longer voyages dictate, as the good Admiral mentioned, dictate to put more vessels on the water. We have estimated about 30% more vessels will be necessary, which means more carbon dioxide at the expense of the environmental pollution. So there are many different aspects. On the average, doubling of the rates, and having the European Community laws, the EU, fuel EU Maritime, and the EU ETS, we're going to see a minimum of 30% increase in the penalties going through the Cape of Good Hope. And also, we are going to have even more problems in case the speed through the longer route is increased. I don't know if...
Karakis, I think this has been very useful. It adds another perspective to this problem. I think so far most people have been focusing on the freight rates and the premium increases for war risks cover. So now you've given us the perspective of the environmental impact and the penalties. I understand that you have also looked into alternative options and solutions which could be used, combined transportation modes, so that certain vessels could avoid the full detour and this much longer deviation. So would you like to share that with us as well?
Yes. Let me go to this. First of all, as the Admiral mentioned, we could have a pipeline from in Saudi Arabia from east to west and bypass the Bab el-Mandab Strait, which is really the area of concentration of the Houthis. But problems will be very severe in case there is an attack in the Straits of Hormuz, which is another choke point in the area. So alternatively, we have what we see here, the IMEC route from India through Jebel Ali and Saudi Arabia to Piraeus, or from Kuwait to Latvia, or from China to Ireland through what we call the middle and the southern route. It is understood that we have the so-called modality shift. We don't use only ships, but we also use railways and possibly airplanes in these routes. This is a potential diversification of the routes, and this is another consequence of this disruption, which all of us are wishing to go away. But another situation, for example, is in the west to east coast of the United States. East coast can be reached by railways from the west, which is more accessible from the Asia market. I noticed that also countries are affected. India has their umbilical cord for their trade to Europe is through the Suez. So it is to their best interest to secure this route. And same is for Egypt, which loses a big amount of money, not have the passage through Suez. So this is also not only type of vessel, but cargo and countries are affected.
Thank you for that. I now move to Mr. Anastasiou. The Rear Admiral made reference to the digital wake of ships to facilitate the targeting. So, Mr. Anastasiou, I understand you have witnessed different weapons being used in this crisis, which are not physical weapons, but it's rather something which has to do with cyber attacks. So would you like to give us an overview of how the Houthis have been operating and how this has been affecting shipping from the cyber risks perspective?
Thank you, Ms. Kolopoulou, for the introduction and for the question. Indeed, as Vice Admiral mentioned before, there has been a huge increment of AIS spoofing cases over the past months in the Red Sea. And this is just an amount of spoofing attacks that are being added to all GPS spoofing that has been occurring since the war in Ukraine. We have had, I would say April was a very hot month for both Black Sea and Red Sea, as we had a huge GNSS spoofing attack. Just to mention, we've had in April 117 vessels appearing on the Cairo International Airport instead of being at the sea. So we see that Houthis rely on the digital as well in order to ensure their attack is efficient. And as it was mentioned before, shutting down your AIS is a way to mitigate this vulnerability. However, it's not the only way. There are ways to ensure the integrity of, first of all, the GPS data that are being incorporated inside the automatic identification data. And therefore, you can ensure that there is no interference performed on these kind of positioning systems, and ensure a safer route towards the destination. This will ensure that the supply chain will not have a tremendous impact. Therefore, goods will not deviate their destinations, and they might arrive on time upon a successful arrival of the vessel. But we should not forget that GNSS GPS spoofing is a method of a cyber attack. We have been addressing cybersecurity not so seriously over the past few years, and this is how we see. Then this is, I would say, a reason of why we see this happening at this time. However, we have been able to address cybersecurity in a more serious way over the past, I would say, 6 months, with the introduction of new regulations that all classification societies have contributed. And therefore, we try to ensure that at least the vessels will have a level of cyber resilience that will ensure their safe arrival at their destination.
Could you please share with us a bit more about the role of the classification societies and how they can assist the industry in preserving the flow of trade and continuing the operations uninterrupted?
Definitely. All class societies are part of the International Association of Classification Societies, where we address all topics, technical and non-technical, I would say, that have to do with every part of the vessel. One of these parts that has been recently addressed and taken under consideration is cybersecurity. What we do is we have developed a set of controls that are to be enforced, that are going to be implemented on board the vessel and ensure this level of cyber resilience, at least as a starting point, as a baseline, and that will keep evolving the way that technology is evolving. So we will have a very symmetric growth of cybersecurity resilience on board the vessels. All class societies take part in joint working groups with industry key players, system manufacturers that are addressing all vulnerabilities within their systems and are contributing in ensuring that there is a better maturity or higher maturity in terms of cybersecurity in these systems. And this is following all systems throughout their life cycle. This will ensure a proper integration on board these vessels and achieve a better level of resilience for cybersecurity and safety, and ensure the safety of crew members and the vessels themselves.
Thank you so much. I understand Dr. Kokarakis would like to add something.
Yes, please. Cybersecurity is one aspect of the equation, but the other important aspect is to evaluate the consequences for the vessel in case of alternative route. We will tell, we can find out how much, what it means financially with respect to penalties from the regulations. And let's not forget the midterm measures that are coming from IMO, which may be more stringent than the ones from the European community. Also, what it means with respect to what a higher speed will mean for the vessel with respect to its performance, if it's going to be labeled A, B, C, D, or E. So this can be done for a series of alternative routes. And this, we have done it, for example, for a container ship, for bulk carriers. It will depend if we look into the vessel on an annual basis or per voyage basis. So this can be done easily by the classification societies.
Yeah, and I understand that this is a much more complicated exercise, given the different factors that have to be taken into account in order to reach to the optimum solution.
Yes.
But yes, I understand, however, that there are companies who have adopted a position from the very beginning and have announced publicly that their strategy is to stop crossing through the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. So I don't know, Dr. Kokarakis, whether you have some statistics about the different company profiles who have adopted this strategy.
Again, as you pointed out earlier, this is a matter of insurance premiums. Here we are we are dealing with a situation where the risk is well known in advance. So how can you be insured in that case? I was talking to a shipper 2 days ago, and he said, I'm afraid to ship anything through Suez because I run the risk to lose all my cargo. So the majority of the companies will follow the safe way without having guarantees. As it was pointed out, the Chinese or the Russians are not immune from attacks. And the Houthis have threatened, although I don't think that's feasible, to attack vessels even in the Mediterranean Sea. But this is not going to happen. It is very complicated. I don't think they have the technology available to reach up to that point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that what you mentioned about insurance premium, wearing my insurance hat and not my Vista hat, has been an issue because since the beginning of the attacks back in November and until January, the additional premium, the war risks additional premium for the transits has gone up by something like 40 times. So, yeah, the cost, particularly for the high-value ships, is huge, and this is a factor which also determines the decision of many companies. I think I would now like to invite the participants to ask the panelists any questions they might have. And either Dr. Kokarakis or Mr. Anastasiou will be, I understand, happy to discuss any inquiries or any further points that need to be addressed. I see here in the chat that there's already a question by Mr. Trifilis, but I think that it's addressed specifically to the chamber.
I believe Mr. Dreyfus has something to add here. He's
Yes.
eagerly waiting.
Sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to react to Dr. Kakarakis' assumption that ship owners who don't go through this area are dictated only by insurance approaches. Some companies keep clearly in mind that there is a risk, and the people from our Navy and the Admiral will not say the contrary. There is a real risk with a very short delay of reaction for people on board the ship to get protection. So there is a real risk for the crews, and some companies in the world put that as a priority, not the insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Louis Dreyfus. I think that there are many companies who have very actively advised that their primary concern is the safety of the crew. And I think from the very beginning, this has been the case for many companies around the globe. I agree. So we have some more questions coming in. And we have one question from Mr. Vijos. How do you evaluate the simultaneous crisis all over the world and your prediction for the second semester of 2024? Dr. Kokarakis? Some thoughts about how things might develop until the end of the year, because you also referred to what's happening with the Panama Canal. So you obviously have made a more wide analysis of the geopolitical situation.
Thank you. This is an interesting question because it points out to the future. And I believe we start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. We are like to be optimistic and see the bottle half filled as rather than half empty. The Panama Canal has started increasing the number of passages that they allow every day. Not by very high percentage, but it seems that things are getting closer to normality. It appears that the situation with the Houthis is in general affected by the overall geopolitical crisis in the Middle East, but it is expected to be to a lesser extent also happening until the end of the year, until the end of 2024. Hopefully reducing in intensity as the months go by. What is critical here to point out is for the guys that are ready to order container ships, because of the need for more vessels, to think of the future and the possibility of having vessels without chartering after the end of the crisis.
Again, the supply and demand issue.
Right. So
It-
hold your horses
Yeah.
for the future.
Mr. Anastasiou, any thoughts from your side about future developments and probably where technology will be taking us, where we need to focus in terms of the technology following this new type of war in a way?
As the technology is evolving, and we see that nowadays we have very low latency satellites providing internet and providing connectivity to shore. The threats are going to only increase, and I would urge ship owners to be prepared, and address cybersecurity in a more serious way. There are ways that class can contribute on that. We have already developed requirements that would assist from a technical point of view, and we should not neglect interconnectivity and highly connectivity, I would say, purposes, and try to be calm and think that, okay, it's not happening to us, because cyber warfare is something that is feasible at the moment. It was something that was just a science fiction novel in the past, but now we see it happening every day all around us. So it should be properly addressed, I would say.
Thank you very much. I think this is a good point to summarize a bit what we've discussed today. We've had a very thorough analysis of the risk and of the mitigating efforts adopted by the naval forces. I understand that the French Navy will remain committed in the area to ensure that maritime security prevails. And following that introduction, we've had a very useful analysis of both the financial consequences, but also the environmental impact that the detour that most shipping companies are adopting is costing. I think that we're all in agreement that it's not only the cost, which is the primary factor for the decisions of the shipping companies. I think the primary factor is the value of human life, and this has been stressed throughout this discussion. And it was very interesting to hear that we're entering a new era where Houthis are using alternative weapons. It's as Mr. Anastasiou mentioned earlier today, we're experiencing something which was considered to be science fiction a few years ago. But even though these cyber attacks are a bit new to us, there are means, I understand, for the industry to be protected and for international trade to continue uninterrupted. I don't know whether there are any further questions from the audience or indeed from the organizers, if there's anything else. Mr. Yes, please.
I know I don't see any raised hands in the list.
No, no raised hands in the list. So I would like to thank you all for participating today. Would like to thank the Chamber for organizing the seminar. It's been very interesting. I think we heard different views and we have covered different angles of this ongoing problem. I understand that no one is optimistic that this is something which will go away soon, regrettably, because we're talking about a wider crisis which is evolving in that particular area with far-reaching implications. I would like to thank all speakers and the participants, and I hope that you have all found this to be an interesting session and enjoy the rest of your day. I don't know whether someone from the chamber would like to address the audience as well.
Cyril, you want to say a few words, and then I will.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Conclusion.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the contributors to this webinar, the organizers, the participant panelists, the questions. And I would like to stress the fact that it will be an ongoing crisis or an ongoing set of crises, and it will probably wise to re-examine it in a few months to take stock of the evolutions of the crisis, of the evolutions of the maritime sector. And I think that in that respect, this committee is playing its role to the perfection. Thank you very much again.
Sorry. Thank you, Cyril. Anyone from the chamber wants to say before maybe I say a few words of a tentative conclusion for this situation? We could not deal with the whole aspect of the situation in 1 hour. Nevertheless, it is clear that it's a dangerous situation which could last some time in any case. It's dangerous in terms of geopolitical aspects. And it's also very costly. At the time being, it has not been too costly in terms of lives and the wounds and for the personnel involved, but it's a risk which is on the head of all the people going through the Red Sea because it's their business or because it's their duty. And I want to say an enormous thank you in terms of appreciation to the navies involved, all the navies involved, and the French Navy, who is at risk every day. It's also for the enormous increase of costs for shipping, for commercial shipping, in terms of more fuel, more time at sea. It's also quite costly in terms of environmental issues with more emissions due to more miles. I'm personally, having been advocating speed reduction for 7 or 8 years now, it's not going in the good direction because people are increasing the speed, which is not good for environment. So it is not a good situation, definitely. And personally, I don't see how long it will. Some people can be optimistic, I heard. I don't know what to say about it. But it will be changing maybe our habits in terms of logistical approach, in terms of maybe one day you're using canals, and that's quite worrying for canal authorities for the future, discovering that some areas can be totally forbidden or difficult to go through. So that might have consequences. I don't know if there's any conclusion to draw at this stage. But again, I want to, as you did, Vivi, as you did, Cyril, thank everyone, people, the spectators, the people in the audience, but our speakers, Admiral, John, Panos, Vivi, Cyril, and the organizers from the chamber. Has been a lot of work. So thank you to Catherine and her team for the Chamber of Commerce, and to Laurent, the president of the chamber. I think that will end the session today, which I've been happy to chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to you all.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Alors, comment on tourne? L'event is over. Comment j'en sors?